What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Nick, and I hope that you're doing well whenever you are checking out this video. I know I am doing fantastic today because we have a very special video for you guys. This is one that I've been wanting to make for quite some time now in some capacity, but never had the opportunity to do it and was trying to figure out a way to make it a little bit more interesting or a little bit different than what you normally see here on YouTube. And that is a video dedicated, of course, to TV, as that's what we're all about here on this channel, but more specifically a video talking about some of my personal favorite and least favorite TV characters. This is something that we've been trying to, like I said, incorporate into the channel for the last couple months now. We've been doing a lot of TV type videos, of course, and this is something that we even had the idea of way back about a year ago when we did our sitcom tournament. We kind of, foreshadowed that we were going to be doing some character type videos in the future. So we're finally getting around to it, which is very exciting. Shout out to my buddy Mike as well here on YouTube. Mike's Talks and Thoughts, who does really excellent tier lists on some TV characters as well on his channel. And like I said, I wanted to do something a little bit different that wasn't just like your standard type of video like that. So I came up with a different way to incorporate the same topic, but with a bit of a twist here. So what I have here is a Red Wings cap, here you can see, with a bunch of different pieces of paper here with different TV shows on them. All different genres, all different eras, of course. Again, all different styles is what we're all about here on this channel. And each one I'm going to just randomly select here one at a time, reveal to you guys the show, of course. And then for each one, I'm going to give you 4 different characters per show. My favorite character, my least favorite character that I think is the most underrated, and a character I think is the most overrated. And this will be a good way to, like I said, incorporate this topic, again, a little bit more uniquely, but also create some discussion in the comments as well. Give a little bit more perspective on these characters. Most of the time you just hear, favorite or least favorite. So I hope that the overrated and underrated will be a little bit more unique as well. With that said, go ahead and post in the comments any of your thoughts as we go along throughout this video. There's definitely going to be some controversial picks, I can tell, for some of these shows with a lot of different characters, lots of options to pick from there. One last thing before we dive into it here is for a couple of these shows and for some of the characters, I am going to talk about spoilers if it helps me justify why I'm picking a character for a certain category the way I am. If there's a big event that happened within the show and it made me like or dislike the character more or less, obviously that'll help me in my arguments here. But I will be providing timestamps throughout the video if you want to jump over those sections if you don't want to hear spoilers for any of those shows. With that said, let's dive right into it here. Got my hat all ready to go here, and let's pick out our first show here and get this thing started here. All right, I have the paper here. I'm going to reveal to it for you on screen, upside down there. Looks like it is SpongeBob to start us off. Classic Nickelodeon cartoon as well here. And this one is going to be a little bit interesting because for me, I think most of the characters on SpongeBob are honestly pretty good. So there's not really a lot I dislike. So this is going to be a little bit tricky, but let's start off with my favorite, and I'm definitely going to go Patrick here. Patrick is just classic. You can't really go wrong with him. So many quotable moments from the show as well. The thing with Patrick is just like, for it being a kid's show, obviously you want that sort of like just simple humor, slapstick, physical type comedy, and that's what Patrick really does well within the course of the show. Obviously great chemistry with a lot of the other characters as well. SpongeBob, of course, him and SpongeBob have just so many memorable scenes, so many memorable quotes as well. Is mayonnaise an instrument? Probably the most iconic quote from the entire show, and it comes from Patrick Star, of course, so definitely going to pick him as my favorite there. As far as my least favorite character, like I said, don't really have a great pick for this, but I think I'm going to say Sandy here. Just of the main characters, I just feel like she wasn't really utilized as well, especially in the later seasons where her whole character basically just became the fact that she was a scientist. That was really her only personality trait, and I just feel like it got kind of old after a while, and they didn't really expand on that as much as they did in the earlier seasons. So I'm going to say Sandy as my least favorite. For the most underrated, I'm definitely going to go Plankton here. Even though Plankton is a big part of the show, I just feel like a lot of people don't really give him as much attention as he really deserves there. I always found him to be hilarious, especially in the early seasons. Of course, him and Mr. Krabs having all their hijinks together, but even more so than that, any of the like special big event episodes that they did, like Truth or Square or Friend or Foe, Pest from the West, any of those like, big special, really hyped up episodes, Plankton was always a really big part of those. And I just feel like his role is just often overlooked within those specific episodes. So I would say he is the most underrated from SpongeBob. And then overrated, as much as I hate to say this, I think I am going to have to say SpongeBob here. Just on account that I feel like, again, this isn't really a great pick because there's not really a lot of hate, but I would say SpongeBob just because he's the main character, and obviously he's going to get a ton of attention regardless, so I would just say that a lot of the other side characters, I think, are overall a little bit stronger than him, but I do love SpongeBob as well in general. All right, one show out of the way here, a good one to start off with. Again, SpongeBob, very, very classic. Let's see what else we have here in the mythical hat here. This is going to be a good one for us. Oops. The Walking Dead here. Probably the show that I would argue I am most into right now at the moment, watching with my girlfriend as we speak, honestly. The one thing about The Walking Dead that I think is going to be interesting with this is there are just so many characters, man. I think any Walking Dead fan would have a completely different choice for any of these different categories here if you asked them, because there's probably over like 50 plus characters within the show that are like, important to the story and everything. So this is definitely going to be a tough one. In terms of my overall favorite, I definitely have two that I always go back and forth on. It's either Daryl or Negan. Again, kind of just basic choices because I think most people would argue that they are overall the best, but for a reason, because they are just awesome on the show. Negan, of course, is the villain. He's, the bad guy there, but you kind of just love him just on the way he's portrayed. Jeffrey Dean Morgan just does such a good job with his portrayal of Negan there. Just a really like menacing figure, in the show, and just has a lot of fun with his performance, like I said. And then with Daryl, played by Norman Reedus, of course, kind of the breakout star from the show, became huge once the show really blew up. Just a lot of fun as well. Total badass when it comes to the action scenes. Probably the best character when it comes to any of the physical action type scenes as well. Just really iconic look as well with the leather vest and the crossbow and everything. Just a classic look as well. So between those two, I would say they're arguably both my favorites. So if I had to split the hairs here and just pick one, I think by a very, very, very small margin, I'd go with Negan here, but it's a really, really close matchup between those two. As far as my least favorite character, I would probably say Gregory on this one. A very, very minor character in terms of the overall kind of, story and everything. And the course of the show, he comes in much later in the show. He's not really in it for any of the earlier seasons, but he's just a really stubborn character, doesn't really get along with anyone, is just kind of a dick to Maggie, honestly, which is just not really the most, fun thing to watch on screen. Him and Jesus are, of course, the kind of leaders and the people that represent the hilltop on the show. So that's how he kind of gets introduced, this other sort of community that he runs within the show that Rick and his gang kind of stumble across. But Gregory is just like I said, just really stubborn, just really hard-headed, and just is kind of, always there to cause trouble, always gets himself in hot water, talking to, like, Simon and the Saviors and all that. Just really not a very strong character at all. As far as the most underrated character from The Walking Dead, this is a tough one because there's many, many that I could pick here. As far as ones that I think are overlooked on the show. Someone like Noah, who wasn't really a big part of the show. He was only on it for a handful of episodes during season 5, but he was really, really entertaining, played by Tyler James Williams, who you might recognize from Everybody Hates Chris, which caught my eye when he was introduced, so that was cool. A lot of the earlier season characters as well, like T-Dog, I think was great, the comic relief of the earlier seasons. Even someone like Herschel, I think as well, Maggie's father on the show, is also really, really underrated from the earlier seasons, but I think my true answer here is going to be Carol, I'm going to say, for the underrated character. I think she just has the best development of any of the characters over time. When we first see her in season 1, she's a very kind of, just sticks to herself, is really shy, is really quiet, just doesn't really, have a lot of interaction with any of the other characters. A lot of that is at the hands of her husband, who is kind of abusive and is just a real dick overall. Just doesn't really let her interact with a lot of people, and you just really feel for her. It's just kind of an emotional situation that she's in. Her daughter is also kind of trapped in this situation as well, so you just have a lot of sympathy for her. And then over time, as the show progresses and as it goes on, she becomes much more strong and fends for herself, and really just sticks up for her and her daughter more throughout the series. And by the end, she's just like a total badass, just a complete 180 transformation over time. So I can really appreciate what they did with her character. And it's reported also that her and Daryl are supposed to have a spin-off series from The Walking Dead, because they're just super popular, two of the most popular people from the show. And I think it would definitely be deserving for Carol to have a spin-off, just because I said that transformation is just awesome to see throughout the course of the series. And then as far as an overrated character, this one is definitely going to ruffle some feathers in the comments. There's a lot of people that absolutely love this person from the earlier seasons, but for me personally, I just do not really enjoy him as much as a lot of other people, and that's going to be Shane here. I can see why a lot of people like him, because he is very entertaining. He is introduced right from the start as Grick's partner when they're cops before the apocalypse breaks out, and he is a really stand-up guy. He's always fighting for Rick and him. They really have a brotherhood, sort of pact that you can really see great chemistry between those two. But then once the apocalypse breaks out, then he just really does a lot of stuff that's really, just turns you off from him. He sleeps with Lori and gets her pregnant, and then we find out later in the series that happens. And then, Carl kind of looks to him as a father figure more than he does with Rick, which is just heartbreaking, because you want to see Rick, stand up for himself and obviously get with his family and stuff, and Shane's just in the way, and he just does a lot of things later. The way that he just is really stubborn and hard-headed, like I said earlier, and just does a lot of things in the earlier seasons that if he was a person, you would want to avoid him. If he was a real-life person, you would not want to be friends with him. You would just want to avoid him at all costs. He is a valuable person within the series, as far as, because he's a strong guy and he can take on a lot of the walkers and stuff, so he's good to have for protection purposes, but he's just a really toxic person within the course of the group. He just gets in fights with everyone. I don't know, there's just a lot of things about him that just turn me off from him. All right, moving on to our next show here. Let's take a look at which one it's going to be here. Got quite a few left. Oh, this is a big one that we were waiting on here. How I Met Your Mother. You cannot go one video on this channel talking about TV without bringing up How I Met Your Mother. The shirt that I have on now is very Barney Stinson-like. I don't know if you can see that, but it says, "I don't get drunk, I get awesome." I actually had this before I got into the show, but it's very reminiscent of something that Barney would say, so I find that interesting. For me, the best character on the show is going to be Barney Stinson. Pretty predictable, I feel like, but there's a reason why he was really the standout from the show, and why Neil Patrick Harris is just so likable by everybody. He's just so funny, that's the main thing. I think with me, I've talked about this in a previous video as well, but I would argue that Marshall is actually a funnier character than Barney, just on account that he is just so goofy and just so many antics about him that you really just find to be a lot of fun. But I think Barney, in the course of the series, has so many more emotional moments and a lot more just like impactful scenes within the show that connect him on both humor level and emotionally. Obviously, all the relationship stuff that he goes through with like Quinn and Nora and Robin, of course, later in the series. And then in the series finale, when we see him hold his daughter for the first time, is like a really impactful scene as well. So there's just a lot of things like that that bridge the gap between him just being like wild and crazy and want to party all the time and everything, and then those really like intimate, quieter, emotional moments as well. As far as the worst character from the series, I'm going to say Zoe on this one. I'm just not really a huge fan of season 6 overall. It's definitely my least favorite of the series, and Zoe was a big part of that. The whole relationship between her and Ted was just not really that interesting. Didn't really care for them together. I didn't really think they had a lot of chemistry, and just not very memorable in the course of the series. I know some people would argue for some of the other like love interests on the show, like Jeanette is probably another big one for Ted at least. But Zoe, for me, is just the one that sticks out the most as far as one that I'm just not really a fan of. Next up, we have our underrated Him Yim character, and within the fan base, this is definitely going to ruffle some feathers once again. This is going to be a very controversial pick for two main reasons. A, because this person is one of the main 5, so most people wouldn't assume that they are really underrated because they're one of the main characters in the series. But also, within the fan base, I've seen nothing but distaste and just flat out hate for this person, which I just cannot get behind at all, and that's going to be Lily Aldrin here. I absolutely love Lily. I think she is probably my second favorite character from the show behind Barney, honestly. I've just been a really big Allison Hannigan fan for a long time. A lot of other projects that she's done, of course, stuff like Buffy and the American Pie series, in terms of stuff outside of TV, have just like really elevated her as an actress. And then, of course, How I Met Your Mother was another big one for her. But I just love her character. Like, I just think that she is so honest, and always is the person they go to for advice, is always there to, console people and always, push them into doing the right thing. The scenes with her and Barney in the beginning of season 4, where he's kind of confessing his love for Robin, is like a great example of that, where she's just always there to just push him, to go for it. And she's always really excited for Barney and Robin to get together and stuff like that. So she's just a very, compassionate person, I feel like. There's definitely a lot of distaste for her in the way that she was kind of really mean to Marshall in the beginning seasons, where she called off the wedding and everything. And that was something that Mike actually brought up in his video on Him Yim characters as well. But I don't know, for me, it's just like, that's so early on in the series. That's like really in season 1. And then going after that, all she is like very supportive, and her and Marshall obviously have great chemistry with one another. So I don't know, I think a lot of her positive things kind of outweigh any negative aspects of her character. And then for the most overrated character here, this is another tough one because similar to SpongeBob, there's not really a lot of characters that I dislike from How I Met Your Mother because, of course, it's my favorite show, so you wouldn't expect there to be too many. But if I have to pick somebody, I'm probably going to say either Nora or Kevin here. I think with season 8 in particular, it's a bit of a hit or miss season for me, just because of the fact that there's so many other love interests on the show. And those two in particular, I just never really felt like they clicked with their respective partners in the show, either Barney or Robin. Because Kevin was just always kind of there, and I just feel like he didn't really add much to the show, even though I do like Hal Penn, but he just didn't really fit the kind of tone and style of How I Met Your Mother, that I feel like it just didn't really balance him just being there. It just didn't really fit. And then with Nora, this is another one where like the fan base is like absolutely intoxicated with Nora. They just absolutely love her. For me, I'm more of a Quinn guy myself. I think Quinn and Barney are superior to Nora and Barney, but I know that's a pretty hot take, so that's definitely going to be a bit controversial for this video. But for me, I just feel like Nora, again, just didn't really fit the style and tone of How I Met Your Mother. There was just a lot of things about her character that just didn't really balance out with Barney, I feel like. So, but that's just me, of course. So as far as an overrated character, I would say those two. All right, moving on to our next show here. We are 3 shows in. Gonna do few more here. Let's take a look at what we got. Oh, this is going to be a good one. Another drama for us here. Chicago Fire. This is a show that we've talked about briefly in previous videos, mostly in the drama tournament, me and Steph. This is one of our favorite shows. The Chicago shows are really interesting when it comes to its characters and the way that they are portrayed and written. The Chicago shows is they have a lot more sort of like story arcs and kind of like soap opera-esque elements to their plots and their characters than, say, like a Law and Order would have. So the Chicago shows are really more like grounded in the characters than a standard drama would be. So there's a bigger emphasis on them. So this is another one that's going to be pretty tough to narrow down for these categories. I'd say my favorite character from the show is definitely Herman. Chris Herman is definitely one of the best from the series. Just a really great comic relief character. Really humble guy as well. He's in the show, one of the traits that he has is that he's a father because he has so many kids. So he's always like looking after a lot of the other guys in the firehouse, and like a lot of the young guys, he kind of has like this father figure type energy about him, which is really cool to see. And like I said, he's the comic relief, definitely the funniest character on the show. So many memorable quotes, especially from the early seasons as well. Arguably my favorite episode in the entire series is called My Lucky Day, and it was from the most recent season, season 9. And it's a bottle episode, so it only focuses on a couple main characters, which are Herman and Cruz in this one. And the plot is that they get trapped in this elevator, and the whole time you are not sure if they're going to survive. And that's like, and you can tell like the performances of these guys and the pain and the emotion is just like so intense in this one. And Herman just absolutely nails the sort of tone and everything that they're going for in this episode. Really a class act in acting there, for sure. One of my absolute favorites. As far as my least favorite character, I'm definitely going to say Matt Casey here. As much as that's definitely going to, again, ruffle some feathers, definitely going to be a controversial pick, I really just do not like him at all. Like I said earlier, the soap opera elements are one of the biggest keys to Chicago shows and Chicago Fire specifically. And throughout the entire series, Matt Casey's character is just like enthralled in so many different relationships and so many different pairings with all these partners that he has over time, and I just don't care for like any of them, man. One thing about Casey that is really like prevalent within the show is the fact that he's just always like moody, and he's just always like real demanding too, because he's the lieutenant of the station, so he's the boss of everyone, and all he does within the course of the show is just demand people to do shit. Like, and I know that's his job, but like he does not really do much on the course of the show, and it just comes off as like really lazy and just he just doesn't have a lot of good qualities about him, you know. And in the later seasons, the more recent seasons actually, he's with the character Brett, who's one of the paramedics on the show. And their relationship just is like a total mess, man. Like, they just cannot figure themselves out. And the will they, won't they element to it is just so overblown and so bloated on the show. I just really don't care for it at all. There's so many other better relationships on the show that they could focus on more, like Cruz and his girlfriend that having a baby in this most recent season, which is really awesome. Stella and Severide, who get engaged in the season, and then the main focus of it is on these two that are just like a total opposite of one another and just do not fit at all. So I'm just not a fan of that when it comes to his character. For an underrated character here, I'm going to say Gallo on this one. I think Gallo is definitely one of the stronger characters that they've introduced in the last couple seasons. The Chicago shows in general have just gone through like so many characters as well. So this is another one where I think a lot of, if you asked a bunch of different people, you know, who would you say for this, you'd get a lot of different answers here. And for me, I really like the later seasons a lot. Gallo is someone that comes in as, he's really ambitious because he's a young guy, and he wants to make a good impression on everyone and, you know, wants to do right by everyone. But sometimes his ambition can get the best of him. You know, sometimes he gets in hot water if he doesn't follow orders properly. Sometimes he, you know, he's not thinking clearly about what he can do for other people, and he just kind of focuses on himself sometimes. So the dynamics between him and a lot of the other characters, I think, are really good. I think his character is very relatable in that sense, where he always is, very optimistic and stuff, but when things go wrong, they go wrong, and it's hard to maintain that sort of optimism for a long time. And that's just something I can really appreciate about his character is they don't make him, perfect by any means. They don't make him, a superstar all the time. When he fucks up, he fucks up, and it's something that he has to deal with and stuff like that. I think a lot of the time, TV is very, it's very Hollywood, right? So you always want that happy ending and stuff. And sometimes with his character, they just don't get that. And it's a much different sort of approach than you see a lot of other shows take. So that's something I can always appreciate about his character. And then for the most overrated character, this is another cop-out, but I'm going to say Matt Casey again, just because, like I said earlier, I just really do not like him at all. So... and he is the main character of the show. His actor, Jesse Spencer, was the big name coming in. He was on House for a long time, so he had a really good career forward, or prior to that, rather. So I would just say that he's pretty overrated. All right, another show up to discuss here from the hat. Let's take a look here. We've gotten through a few dramas here already. Oh, this is another good one. The King of Queens, very underrated sitcom that I have been rewatching recently. Another shout out to my boy Mike here is well deserved for this one. Last Christmas he got me the full series on DVD, so thank you, Mike, if you're watching this. I've been rewatching it recently, and just, man, so many memorable episodes, so many funny characters for sure. This is a pretty easy one though, because there's not that many characters, so pretty easy to put people with these different categories. My favorite, hands down, definitely is Arthur here. Arthur Spooner is one of the funniest TV characters of all time, man. Jerry Stiller is just such a legend. A lot of people know him from Seinfeld, where he's, I think, George's dad on that show. He plays George's dad. I really like him on Seinfeld, too. I think he's very good on that. But King of Queens is definitely my favorite show that he's ever been on. Man, he just has so many funny moments with Doug and Carrie. My favorite scene in the entire show is just him arguing with Doug about what pizza to order, and it's just such a funny scene. Like, it's so simple, that's the thing. It's just like such a simple concept, but Jerry Stiller's performance just elevates it so much. He just has so many funny moments. Him and Spencer as well have really good chemistry. Of course, him and Carrie, because they're father-daughter on the show, so they have some really good moments together as well. But man, Jerry Stiller is just such a legend, man. R.I.P. to Jerry Stiller, man. Really, really miss him. In terms of the show's worst character, I'm definitely going to go Richie here. I don't really know if that's a hot take, because I feel like most people don't really either know Richie or just don't really like him like me. He was a main part of the first 3 seasons, and then he eventually left, and they replaced him with Danny, who I think is way better. I really don't like the first 3 seasons all that much, mostly because of his character, because he's just really annoying, dude. His whole thing is he calls everyone Moose, and he's very Italian. That's that's his whole character, pretty much, is that he's Italian. And I don't know, he's very one-dimensional. Just the shtick gets really old really fast, so just was not really ever that interesting. And he didn't really have a lot of development over those first 3 years either, which was really disappointing. Because, again, a lot of the other side characters on the show, even for a show like King of Queens, definitely did give a lot of the other side characters some really good, development and transformations over the years. Gave them some really interesting storylines, but he was one that just they never did with, so... that's kind of unfortunate, and as a result, I'd say he's my least favorite. As far as the show's most underrated character, a couple for this one for sure, but I'm going to say Spencer here. I think Patton Oswalt in general is underrated, and him playing Spencer on King of Queens is, again, probably my favorite role that he's done. Either that or on the Goldbergs, where he plays the older version of Adam, is also really good. But yeah, Spencer is great. Just, again, him and Jerry Stiller have just so many funny moments together. He works at the subway station, so he's he's kind of, his whole character is that he's just kind of a loser, and he lives with his mom and stuff, but and the characters just kind of like poke fun at that all the time. He was really written as just like someone that they should just make like easy jokes for, but I don't know, man. It just works, man. It's so funny, dog. Oh my god, I was watching an episode the other day, and the plot is that he gets a TiVo, and this was from like 2002 or something, so that was like a high tech thing at the time. But he keeps saying like it records shows for him, and it will recommend shows that it'll think he'll like based on what he's already watched, and so he watches like Sex in the City and 6 Feet Under is one, and then they start recommending him like all these like reality shows because they think he's gay, and then so he tries to supplement it and watch sports, and then it gives him like men's ice skating and stuff, and it's so stupid, but it's so funny, and it's just executed so well, and Patton Oswalt is freaking out the entire time. It's so good, man. I love Spencer so much. He's just so funny. And then finally, we have the most overrated character from The King of Queens. And with this one, I'm probably going to say Holly here. To me, I never really felt like she needed to be a main character. I never really felt like she really had enough like story plot or like elements to make her a main character. It just never really felt justified to me. And she was just better left as a side character, I felt like. So I just say for that, I think that they were a little too optimistic on her, as far as her role within the show, and they just never really like it never really came to fruition when she made the leap to being a main cast member. All right, we're about halfway done. Let's take a look at our next one here. So far, we've had a nice selection of variety here, some drama and some sitcom here. What is the next one going to be? Oh, we got another cartoon up. Probably the biggest one of them all, Family Guy here. One of the biggest shows that we talk about consistently on this channel. Matt, if you're watching, I know you're going to have some strong opinions on this one. For me, I definitely would say that the best character on Family Guy, hands down, is Stewie. And I know that that is a very polarizing pick. Some people love Stewie, some people hate Stewie. I personally love him. I think the episodes with him and Brian are by far the best on the series. Any of the Road 2 episodes are great. Any of the, what is it called? Back to the Pilot is another phenomenal one. A lot of the later series episodes with them are really funny. If there's, like a lot of the newer seasons of Family Guy, pretty much anything like maybe 13 onward is very hit or miss, but if it's a Brian and Stewie plot, it's usually pretty good still. That's the magic with Family Guy, is you can put those two together and make something good out of it. So I'm definitely going to say Stewie is my favorite. As far as my least favorite character, this is a tough one because there really isn't, again, any that I really like hardcore dislike, but I think I'd say Lois here, just because she doesn't really add all that much to the show in comparison to a lot of the others. And with, at least for the earlier seasons, they tried to give her a little bit more of like some development and some more like personality within those eras. And I don't know, it just didn't really work all that well. The one problem with Lois, I felt like, was she was very much stuck in like this very like stereotypical kind of role as like a housewife, right? And that is hard to develop out of when you've done that for so long, and it's just never really worked anything that they've really put her in, you know? And I just feel like she's best left as a supporting character to someone like Peter. As far as the most underrated character, this is definitely another one that's going to be, some people are really going to hate me for this, but I'm going to say Brian here. Matt actually made a video a little while back where he said that Brian was the worst character on Family Guy, which I just cannot believe people would say that, because again, the Brian and Stewie episodes are just so iconic. I guess the main reason why a lot of people dislike him is because of his like politics and stuff, and the fact that they feel like he is more of a like he just has an agenda to push. Maybe like Seth MacFarlane has more of an agenda to push with Brian because they're just so much alike. Like he said in real life that Brian is the closest character to him in like personally, as far as his like personality and stuff. So I can kind of see why people would be turned off by that, but just taking it at face value within the context of the show, I think Brian does a really good job at balancing a lot of the other characters. That's why I feel like he has such good chemistry with people like Stewie, because Stewie is very fanciful, and it's very unrealistic to have a baby scientist who can invent time travel and all these devices and gadgets and everything, and wants to take over the world and stuff. So to balance that with someone like Brian, who's a lot more grounded in reality, is a really smart combination, and that's why it works so well. Or even people like Peter as well. Brian and Peter have so many iconic stories as well within the show that just balance each other really well. So Brian is important there because you need that sort of straight man to counteract the more fanciful, imaginative storylines and characters. And then finally, the most overrated character, for me, I'm probably going to say Adam West here. I don't hate Adam West by any means, but I've seen some people claim that he is like hands down the best character on the show, and I just feel like that's stretching it way too much. Like he's a good side character, but he's never been like top tier in my opinion, but I just see so many other people put him up there. So I just say within the fandom, I think he's pretty overrated. All right, moving on here. Let's see a next show. Let's mix these up a little bit. We've gotten a nice variety so far. I put in 4 of each genre here, so we've gotten 2 of each so far. Ooh, we have another sitcom here, Mike and Molly, another one in my top 3 here. You guys might know that. I've talked about that before. Man, Mike and Molly, just such an underrated show. So many great characters as well, with the best of them all being Vince, hands down. You cannot convince me otherwise that Vince isn't the best character on the show. I just absolutely love that guy. And the thing that I think is so good about Vince is kind of what I was saying about Arthur from The King Queens, is such a simple joke or such a simple line of dialogue can be elevated so much with his performance, because he is just so freaking charismatic on the show. I absolutely love that guy, and literally any character you pair him with, he has excellent chemistry with. Of course, Mike. Molly is great. Joyce, who's his wife on the show, is fantastic. Victoria is great with him. Even characters that you would never expect to work with him, like Samuel as well, is another one. Is just so funny, the contrast between them. Man, Vince he's probably in my top 3 favorite characters of all time. I just cannot get enough of that guy. There's some episodes of Mike and Molly that I've probably seen over 20 times, no exaggeration, because it's a show I've seen all the way through at least 4 or 5 times. It's just such a fantastic comedy to me. I just absolutely love it. And some of those episodes I've just seen on syndication and reruns just countless times. And every single time Vince is on, he makes me laugh without fail, which is, if you can see it that many times and still think it's hilarious, then you're doing something right. And Vince does it every single time for me. After that, the worst character on the show. This is a tough one because there's really only, in the context of the main characters, there's really only 2 that I think are just okay, but really none that I absolutely despise here. So this is another tough one, but if I have to pick someone, I'd probably say Harry here, just because he's just kind of creepy. He doesn't really do much in the show. I don't know. He's not really that interesting as a character. He's definitely a side character at best. I wouldn't even call him a side character. He's barely in the show, but yeah, he doesn't really add much to the story. Just his whole character is he wants to get with Victoria, and that's really it. So I'd say he's not really that great. The most underrated character for me is probably going to be Samuel here. I think Samuel is very underrated. The thing with him is I really wish that they gave him more story. I wish that they gave him some more plots dedicated to just his character and kind of developing it, because obviously the main focus of the show is going to be on Mike and Molly. But in terms of the side characters, the 2 that really get a lot of attention are Vince and Carl. And I like both of them. Obviously, I love Vince, I just was telling you about. But Samuel is one that I feel definitely could have utilized some more story plots to develop his character a little bit further. Because there's a lot of things within the context of the show that he talks about, but we never actually see. We never see his home life. We don't really see a lot of his relationships. We don't really see his roots. You know, he's from Africa, and that would be nice to kind of have a storyline based around maybe seeing his parents or something, but we never get any of that. So it's just kind of disappointing that they never really utilized him to his full potential, I feel like. He's just more there to like crack jokes about Carl and Mike at the diner where he's a waiter there. And he's really good at that. He's really good at just those quick punchlines, you know, that are just really memorable. But again, for the storylines, I think it was underrated in terms of that they just didn't really utilize him all that much. And then finally, for the most overrated, I'm going to say Victoria here. A lot of people love Victoria. A lot of people like Katie Mixon, and I do too. I think that she's really good on pretty much everything that I've seen her in, Eastbound and Down and American Housewife, and of course Mike and Molly. But I feel like her character is just very, very one-dimensional, just very, very limited in her sort of range and her personality. Pretty much her only real like character was that she was a dumb pothead. That was like really all she had in the course of any sort of traits or identity within the show. And again, it would have been nice to expand on that a little bit. The plot where she gets with Carl and they start dating later in the series was good, but it was a bit messy in terms of its execution. There definitely could have been some stronger chemistry between those two, I feel like. And it didn't come off as genuine as some of the other relationships that they've had earlier in the show. Even some for Carl, I feel like. I feel like him and Christina were a way better fit with each other than him and Victoria. But again, that's just me. So, because like I said, a lot of people love Victoria out there, and I definitely see why. She's obviously very pretty, so I can identify with that. But yeah, I just feel like as a character, she was just really limited. All right, let's take a look at the next show here. We're almost through. We got 3 more to go through here. Beginning with another cartoon, one of my all-time favorites, Regular Show here. Cartoons are really making their mark today on this video, which is really cool because I don't really often get to talk about them, and Regular Show is definitely an example of that. We've definitely mentioned it here and there a couple times in the best TV shows of all time, but never really gone in depth here. For my favorite character on the show, I'm going to say Skips here. I think Skips is hands down a really, really good character, really, really solid in terms of his role on the show, played by, of course, Mark Hamill, who you might know from Star Wars, which is really cool that they got someone of such a high caliber to do a show like that. Just really always entertaining to hear stuff like that. For me, the thing about Skips that I always kind of liked within the context of Regular Show is every other character is very like outlandish and very wild and kind of chaotic in some way. And Skips is like super grounded as the straight man. You know, they always look for him or look to him for advice and kind of to fix things when things go awry. And that was really interesting to see within Regular Show because normally it's the opposite. Normally your best character, your favorite character would be the person that's very wild and chaotic. Something like Barney Stinson, for instance, would be a good example there. But on Regular Show, it's swapped because that's the baseline that you would have there. So the more straight, grounded, straight guy of the show is the one that ultimately is considered the best by a lot of people. My least favorite character on the show, I am probably going to say Eileen here. Just because I just felt like she was really annoying, dude. Her and Rigby obviously having some storylines together, and her and Margaret too, as like kind of friends at the coffee shop and stuff like that. I just felt like Eileen was really someone that brought the show down in terms of its kind of demographic, because Regular Show for a kid's show was a lot more mature than a lot of the other shows at the time. And Eileen was the thing that was holding it back in terms of like still kind of making it a kid's show. The way that she talked, the way that she acted was very juvenile in that way, and it just really threw the show off in terms of like its style, I felt like. In terms of the most underrated character, for me, I'm going to go Pops here. I think Pops is really good within regular show. Absolutely love him as far as just he's so cheerful, he's so bright. He's kind of a doofus in his own right, but he's just a lovable doofus. He's like the Marshall of regular show. I feel like if you've ever seen the early short films that J.G. Quintel made when he was in college prior to regular show as well, there's archetypes to Pops within those shorts as well. The Jolly Land from Neverland or Lollyland or something like that. It's been a while since I watched those, but yeah, you can definitely see the formation of Pops in those early works, and then what eventually he'd become. Like I said, just very optimistic, joyful kind of guy. That was really a nice balance to have on the show. And then for the most overrated character, I'm going to say Mordecai here. The whole Mordecai as a simp thing, I think, has really kind of overshadowed a lot of his character within the show. Like, a lot of people look back on him as just kind of someone that was really selfish and really kind of a dick overall, honestly. And he was never really the best friend to Rigby, and just kind of did a lot of stuff that would again, if he was a real person, you just really wouldn't want to associate with him all that much. And I think that's become what people recognize him as, and within the fandom, I would say that's the bigger takeaway for his character nowadays. All right, we got two more to go over here. I wanted to have a little bit of extra here so that we could get a nice selection here. So let's see what our next one is going to be here. Oh boy, here, our last cartoon of the day is going to be Berenstain Bears here. This is a classic among classics, man. If you grew up in either the 80s with the 80s version of it or the 2000s like I did with the PBS version, you know yourself some Berenstain Bears here. And this might seem like a really kind of out of left field choice for me to be including here. But as weird as this sounds, I actually have been watching some Berenstain Bears for a future video. Wink, wink. That I am doing research for. So that's why I included it here, because I've been on a kick with it. My favorite character from the show is definitely going to be Papa. Papa Bear is just so lovable, man. So iconic, too. Is hands down the biggest part of the best episode of the show, Papa's Pizza. Anyone out there that can convince you that Papa's Pizza isn't the best episode of Berenstain Bears is lying, and you should not trust a word out of their mouths. Papa's Pizza is fantastic. But even outside of that, there's just so many moments with him that I just think are just so relatable, just so fun, especially for, again, a kid's show. There was a lot of, not maturity necessarily, but it was very much, confident in what it was saying. It wanted to tell you and teach you something, but entertain you at the same time. And Papa was a big part of that. If he got frustrated, if he got overwhelmed with something, there would always be a solution to it that would kind of be the lesson of the episode, and that was a good role model for kids to have back in the day. Papa was definitely someone that they could look up to and kind of take things from the way that they really weren't able to with other shows. As far as the worst character on the show, I'm going to say Mama here. I really don't have anything against her, frankly, but I just didn't really like the fact that she was just so underutilized again. I think that's one of the big things with most cartoons, I feel like, is they really focus on a specific character or a specific group of characters, and once they know that works, they'll keep using them together. And that's something that, again, even in a kid's show like the Berenstain Bears, they found really quickly, was that the lessons that Papa or brother or sister would have would be much more relatable and much more interesting than the ones that Mama would give. So I think that's just why they just didn't really use her for a lot of episodes. But that was definitely something that was really obvious within the show. For the most underrated, I'm gonna go Sister here, man. Sister gets slept on so much within the Berenstain Bears. I absolutely love her, man. And the thing is with because this is something that Matt was talking about as well in one of his videos, is that the 80s version of it, he fucking hates it, apparently. He says that the 80s version is horrible. I don't know what he's talking about, man, because there are some episodes from the older Berenstain Bears that I think are super underrated, man, and probably the biggest one of them all is Too Much Birthday. I love that episode. That's one of my favorites from the entire franchise. And it's a sister-based episode, and like I said, it's just super slept on, man. That whole episode is just my childhood right there. You know, that was one of the ones that I watched constantly growing up, so I have a lot of fond memories of that. But Sister in general definitely had a really impactful role within the show that was not the most obvious, which I think was really cool. Like, the lessons or the sort of things that you would take away from her weren't always the thing that you would most obviously associate it with, if that makes sense. So I just think that they were very creative with how they implemented her within the stories. And then finally, the most overrated character. This is kind of a minor one as well, but I think I'm going to say Too Tall here. One of the people that brother and sister go to school with, so they see him in a lot of the stories where they're at school and stuff. But for me, his shtick just got really old after a while, and some of the episodes that he is the main focus on are just some of the weakest in the show, I feel like. So just overall, just not a very consistent character. All right, we have one more show here that we're going to discuss for today, and this is one that I know a lot of people were waiting on me to talk about, that I was saving here for the end, because I know this one is going to be very hyped for this video, and that is Breaking Bad, ladies and gentlemen. So some of you may or may not know that I recently started watching through Breaking Bad. It's a long time coming, of course. The first episode that I watched a while back was, of course, the pilot episode, and that was for the drama tournament that we did about a month ago, and I enjoyed it. And then recently, when I was trying to figure out what my next show to be watching is alongside The Walking Dead, I figured, fuck it, I'll start Breaking Bad. So I've been very casually watching through it. I haven't really set myself on any particular schedule or any sort of, system or routine or anything. Just been, watching it when I want to. And again, over the last month or so, I've seen through season 1 and a little bit in season 2. The last episode I watched was the episode Grilled from season 2, which, if you know, you know, by the way. That was a fantastic episode. Probably my favorite so far that I've seen of the series. I have to preference that, though, for this, because there are several characters that I know are obviously very important to the story, and that are probably more obvious picks for you guys if you've seen the entire show than are for me, because I haven't gotten to them yet. So there's characters like Mike, there's characters like Gus, there's characters like Huel, and I know there's some infamous ones like Ted as well that I have not seen yet. So if these choices are a little bit more limited in terms of what you would expect, then that's why. With that said, though, here are my picks for these particular categories. My favorite for sure right now is definitely Jesse, man. I love Jesse so much. Aaron Paul is hands down one of the best actors from the show. Perfect casting choice for him to play Jesse. Just such a charismatic guy. Of course, all the banter between him and Walter is fantastic. Just so many memorable quotes as well from the show. One of my favorites so far is when they're out kind of in the desert when they're cooking, and Walter comes out of the RV and he just looks like shit. And Jesse's just like, man, you looked like you crawled out of a microwave. I just love that. That is just such a memorable quote for me. Yeah, Jesse is he's the comic relief, of course. He just has all the funniest moments. Really good chemistry with a lot of the other characters, like I said. So I think he's going to probably stay my favorite from what I hear, because I know I was actually watching a video a couple days ago on the best Breaking Bad characters, and it was like a poll that this website did, polling a bunch of fans of them, and Jesse came out on top, number 1 with the most votes. So I think Jesse is definitely there to stay. In terms of the show's worst character, this is definitely one that I agree with a lot of people on, that I've heard from a lot of people in the fandom as a character that is really infamous, and that's definitely going to be Marie, bro. I cannot stand Marie, dog. I think she is really, really bad on the show. I don't really know if it's like you're supposed to hate her, but I do. Like, I'm not like gonna shy away from it, man. I think she's definitely the worst character, one of the worst aspects of the show for sure. Just everything she does just has like big Karen energy to me, bro. That's what it reminds me of, man. Like the way that she just nitpicks everything. She's always picking fights with everyone. Like her and Skylar, like with the tiara and shit. Like the fuck was that all about, man? And like her and Hank always getting into it too. Like there's just so many moments like that. And I don't know, she's just like a real manipulative person too. Just really not someone that you'd want to be like friends with or you'd want to like associate with, because I know people like that in real life, and like I stay far the hell away from them, man. Like any of those big Karens out there. But yeah, Marie is just, she's definitely, like I said, the worst aspect of the show so far. And I know that there's other characters, like I said, Ted earlier, that are pretty infamous, arguably worse than her, which I am not looking forward to seeing. But for now, I would say Marie is definitely my least favorite. As far as the most underrated, this is one that I disagree with people on, because from what I've heard, this person in particular is considered pretty bad by most people, which I just do not understand the hate for her, and that is Skylar. I think Skylar is top 3, man. I would say her, Jesse is number 1, of course, and then Tuco is also up there for me. I love Tuco as well. But Skylar's great, man. I do not understand why there's so much like animosity towards her. That's another thing that Mike and Matt were talking about in the drama tournament. Like neither of them really like Skylar all that much, and I'm just really curious why. Because to me, in my opinion, the best scenes of the show so far have been in the form of really heavy, like really intense dialogue based scenes, and one that sticks out to me that really like just kind of blew me away in terms of everyone's performance on the show, including Anna Gunn's. Skylar was when everyone's just sitting around the living room discussing Walt's cancer and talking about what his best option is, the path that he should take as far as treatments and stuff. And you just feel the whole time like that Skylar is just so heartbroken, and it's just so painful, for her to go through this. And you just really feel like the intensity and the tension that she has in that scene. And it just really, really blew me away, like just how just raw it was, and how versatile it was in that respect. And of course, all the other actors do a fantastic job there. Bryan Cranston, of course, is amazing too, but I think Anna Gunn just really nails those like really intense, heavy scenes in the show. And like I said, those are definitely my favorite so far. The action scenes are fantastic. Nothing against those by any means. Those are super entertaining. But I think right now, as far as where I'm at in the show, the dialogue and the writing is the top aspect to it for me as far as what I want to see more of going forward in the show. And then finally, for the most overrated character, this one is tough because other than Marie, there's really no other ones that I really dislike, but I think I would say Badger here just because I know that Badger is a fan favorite, but I just haven't seen enough of him yet. I've only seen 1 episode with him, so that one will probably change in the future. But I'm really curious who you guys think is overrated, because I know the Breaking Bad community is obviously big. So I'm curious to know if any of you are watching, who like the go-to example is for an overrated character for the show, because I just don't really know any off of reputation, at least. Maybe some people would say Walter, because there's some aspects to his character that I could see some people disagreeing with. The fact that he is an anti-hero, which is always kind of a tricky thing to get right on the show, because there's obviously things that he does later that I know that are really like controversial and stuff. But I don't know like offhand what the most overrated character is. So if any Breaking Bad fans are watching, I'd love to hear in the comments. And with that said, that is the video, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys did enjoy it here. Again, let me know any of your thoughts on either my picks or your picks for these shows in particular. I'd love to hear anything that goes on with you guys as well in terms of your opinions on these different shows. Let me know if there's any other shows for this sort of style that you'd like me to talk about in the future. And with that, have a great rest of your day. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.